back. I'm back. Not quite as drunk as last time. Had a couple. I tried to stitch together a couple things. I've had these in water for a couple days now, and they've yet to become the tea I said they would. And when you keep them in water, they still kind of develop some, but they don't grow the way they do when they're on their own. Wild carrot. Second year wild carrot. But I wanted to relate to how, I was watching Joe Rogan, Graham Hancock, maybe the first time he was on, like episode 146 maybe, I can't remember the number, but we're talking about Emmimidapuscaria mushroom versus psilocybin or whatever, but like the red, they were talking about how like old Jesus cults were mushroom cults and all this, and I've said it before how wild carrot, and again this one has a particularly dark dot, as some wild carrots do. It looks black, but I'm sure if I'm not sure because it might just be past age, but if I were to shine a light on it, it would probably appear a bit more purple. But irregardless, as I've mentioned before, the red mushroom with all the white dots on it is the inverse of a bunch of white dots with one little red dot on it. It's reciprocal fractions. A bunch of white over one red versus one red over a bunch of white. Reciprocal. Which has to do with the invert, which has to do with y. Y equals 1 over x, or y equals n over x, or whatever. However it breaks down. The inverse curve. Which isn't so different from a parabola or a parable. Jesus spoke in parables, parabolic curve. So you have the cross, you have the ankh. But if we put in our 45s, the Coptic cross, right? And of course, the real cross was what's his name? I am Spartacus, right? The real crosses they hung people on were crosses like this, where this is the ground, which is an X. But we've turned the cross into a Y, which is one of the ways they hit it. But that's the Coptic cross, which is the X. And also, we speak of stigmata. How am I going to do this? Saint Francis of Assisi, who had the stigmata. I know it's green, but that's the marker I had at hand. But the stigmata of the red, the blood coming out of the palm. But Christ couldn't have been hung from his palms, because if you're nailed in the middle of your palm and your whole body weight's on it, the nail will rip through the ligaments and through the bone. My understanding is when they hung people, they put the nail through the wrist, because you couldn't be held. So if you did have a stigmata, it would come through your wrist, not here. So what's that say about Francis of Assisi? Not to say you couldn't manifest a stigmata that way if your belief were strong enough and it served a purpose. That could happen. But yeah, it was through the wrist on this type of cross, not through the palm on this type of cross. But the symbolism is deep. Anyway, so then if we look at a parabola, if we make it a Coptic cross and we put in the parabola, it's not so different from if we make a Coptic cross with an inverse curve and turn it 22.5 degrees. It's not the same object, but symbolically it's more or less the same object. Okay. Yeah, which has to do with reciprocity, friendship. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. Friends. Whereas I forget that biologist's name that, well, no, he's a psychologist, but he talks about biology. The guy who studied chimps. He's got the big beard, big red beard. But yeah, he said that a smart evolutionary tactic was to have a lot of groomers, to be the more, I wouldn't say docile male, but not to be the jerk. To be the nice guy, basically. But yeah, anyway, in that relationship of reciprocity between the little red dot on a bunch of white and the bunch of white dots on the red, so when we look at this object, one of its stages, and again I said before, it's hard to capture the wild carrot in all of its symbolic stages because it just like any plant or any person, it encaptures, it encodes so many forms. But it's similar in shape to a mushroom. And like I said, it really, all the symbolism of the ages has been built into this so that once it was spread around the world, the story that has been laid in stone, on paper, even on hides, living and dead, could be unlocked now. It's a snowflake. It's the North Pole. Antarctica. If you go out in the wild, they're all over the place right now, driving down the road. I had to stop myself 100 times to make sure I didn't stop myself on the way home because I just want to record everything. But Antarctica. Why is it called Antarctica? Well, I mean, this is an arc. And if we look at, there's that famous dude who, there's like one dude in the world on YouTube who's like the famous cuneiform guy. And, who interprets, or who translates cuneiform in the, well, I guess they're called Babylonian clay tablets or whatever, but my understanding is that they're actually Mesopotamian, that there is no found archaeological Babylonian stuff. Like there is no archaeology of Babylon that we know of, is my understanding. That it's really Mesopotamian. But anyway, that famous guy who does all the cuneiform stuff. What was I getting to with that? Cuneiform, Coptic, Antarctica. I can't remember now, but I guess maybe that'll jog my memory later when I watch this at some other point. But yeah, Antarctica. You will see ants climbing on these. More often you'll see them climbing on milkweed, and these and milkweed mature at about the same time. And there is a sacred drink, forgotten, unmentioned, and the only reason I know is because I made it once. I've tried to replicate it and I couldn't, because I wasn't inspired when I tried to replicate it, and I was trying to replicate it in haste. I could replicate it now, except I know I'm in haste, so I know it's not going to work. But I did make something once. But you got to get things at the right time. And the sap of the milkweed, when you get it from just the flower, can't have any of the rest of the plant in it, just from the flower. The nectar of the milkweed is nearly synonymous. It tastes almost exactly like honey. And there used to be the legend of honey without bees. That's like a thing. It's a legend. There's also a species of moth that makes a honey-like substance in trees, much like bees do, so that's another contender. But anyway, the quote-unquote moral of the story is I once made this beautiful concoction which I was so stupid in throwing away. I was going through a traumatic spell, to say the least. And but it is the sweetest, most beautiful, delicious substance. Water, parts of the wild carrot at a certain stage, parts of the milkweed flower with nectar at a certain stage. And what appealed to me about it is that when I ate it, it made, and I remember I ate it at a time where at work I was doing very physical work. A lot of times I do fussy work, so if you're painting window sash like day in, day out, you're not really exerting much energy. You're using some mental energy until you get good at cutting in, as they call it, making that perfect line. Once you're good at that, like, you don't even need to think. You just go on autopilot, you know. For me, I put on an audiobook and just boom, just boop, 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 boop. It's pretty easy, you know. Some days I'm glad for it. But other days, like if you're climbing up and down a, 30-foot ladder, 32-foot ladder or whatever, going up and down, painting a jet on the outside of a house, of a big house or something, or prepping it and priming it and getting it ready, you're up and down, up and down. Some people use staging, this, that, whatever. We tend to use ladders a lot. This crew that I work with, sometimes we'll put up staging, depends what we're doing, or get a lift, but it's basically mostly a lot of up and down on ladders, you know. And so like on a 95-degree day, you know, if you're going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, like it's a pretty good workout. And anyway, I remember at that time I was doing a lot, and I expected the next day to have a lot of soreness and stiffness in my muscles because of the lactic acid buildup, which I only know about because I used to work out a lot when I was younger. When I was younger, I used to work out a lot, and I'm very familiar with the feeling of lactic acid buildup from anaerobic respiration, Krebs cycle in my cells. But anyway, when I ate this particular concoction, the next day, nothing. There wasn't any pain at all. I felt perfect. And I was like, there's something special going on. And I remember I always smell my poop in my socks. You might think that's fucked up, but that's science at its most basic level. I always smell my poop in my socks. And I noticed that my feet had they smelled perfumey. They smelled like they smelled lilac-y, which is what milkweed smells like. Lilac. Milkweed smells more like lilac than lilac smells like lilac. And my feet had a particularly lilac smell as opposed to a cheese or a lactic smell. So that made me think, I have no muscle pain. I worked my ass off yesterday. Now it's today. My feet smell like lilacs and I have no lactic acid buildup. What the fuck's going on? And that's what began me questioning the entire idea of the Krebs cycle of the cell. I question the validity of the inclusion of mitochondria. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't have mitochondria, but I think it's a worthwhile question in an age where we question artificial intelligence, when we question traveling through space, when we question leaving Earth, when we question the apocalypse, when we question God, when we question resurrection, when we question reincarnation, or when we question atheism as in a what should be divine or unified accident, which is like a univine accident is even bigger than God. It's like atheism is like a bigger, broader theism than theism, you know? The only way atheism can win is if it rebrands itself, stops defining itself by the negation of what it opposes, and offers a vision even grander. It has to be grander. Anyway, yeah, but it was all tied up in this dude too, which I'm saying is the symbol of symbols. And also, what's a symbol look like? If we're going to study symbolism at all, I've said it before, but you have a symbol, as in like quote unquote a sign, and then you have the symbol, the object. So now we're dealing with phonetic symbolism, the way things sound. So you have this symbol, ding, the thing you hit, and you have a symbol, the sign, the thing you're looking at. So the symbol and the symbol, the symbol and the symbol. What's a symbol look like? Well, it looks just like this. If you're looking at it from the top, it's a big old circle with a point in the middle. A big old circle with a point in the middle. If you see these in nature, there are ones that, I mean, this looks a little ragtag because I picked it or whatever, but if you go out in nature, you'll see ones that are like perfect full. I mean, they look like a symbol. Granted, it's got all this stuff, but then if you look at like a zildjian symbol or this or that, there'll be these circles, and they have these little circles spiraling all out around them that have been dented into the metal to make it sound a certain way. That's brass, you know, whatever the metal is. But here you have what I'd like to refer to as the mother symbol, that looks like a cymbal, a hi-hat, a crash, the shape of a mushroom, the inverse of the most famous mushroom in the world, and the red dot on the white background. A symbol that's been planted all around the world through corporations, nations, art. The symbol of symbols. Lace. Queen Anne's lace. The bird's nest plant. Daucus carota. Yeah, that's it for today. Hope you're having a good day. I hope you're having a good day. And if you're having a bad day, I hope you get through it. And I hope tomorrow's better, and even better, maybe today could be better. I know what it's like to have bad days. I have bad days. Today, it's a pretty good day. But even on my good days, I get a lot of this. Ugh. So I had a fair share of that. But, you know,